Let's do a brief overview of how the scales and modes volume is laid out and the components which comprise it. Basically, this book is divided according to scales. The first section covers 7-tone scales. Each scale has what is known as a title page. The title pages for the 5, 6, and 8-tone scales are laid out the same as the title page for the 7-tone scales. If you look at the way the title page is laid out, this upper section has keyboard fingerings next to the quick mode generator chart. Along the right side are the breakdown patterns in conventional and sweep picking. In the center left is the scale mode chord chart. It shows you at a glance compatible chords for each scale and mode. At the bottom of each title page is the numeric scale mode chart. This gives you at a glance the numeric formula for the scales and the modes. And as you can see, the title page for each scale is laid out in the same systematic format as is for the major scale. I will teach you the individual components and how to use them later in the video. Following each title page are the breakdown pages, which show you how to use the breakdown patterns from the title page. The breakdown pages are divided into 12 keys, 4 per page. To the far left of each breakdown is the complete fretboard. What that means is every note possible for that scale in that key. To the right of that are the 7 breakdown patterns for complete fretboard playing. This is repeated in all 12 keys. This, again, is broken down for you in every scale. The first 4 scales, the major, the melodic minor, the harmonic minor, and the harmonic major, are graphed out for modal usage also. It is assumed that by the time you get to the other scales in the book, you will know how to use the modes yourself. Though this video only has the time to deal with scales and modes, on page 10 is a chart that will help you understand the chord naming system. Chords and chord naming are dealt with entirely and thoroughly in the Chords and Voicings DVD. On page 12 and 13 are chords from simple triads to complex polychords graphed out in building block format. We will discuss building blocks in lesson 1. The tuning system that all music comes from is known as the equal temperament system. The spectrum of sound is divided into 12 equal segments. So for now, imagine that music is a set of 12 equal-sized blocks. 7 of these 12 tones or blocks have been given positions of major importance. The blocks that are numbered are the major scale. The unnumbered blocks are reserved for flats and sharps. This can best be exemplified on the keyboard. The white keys are the major scale in the key of C. The white keys have names C, D, E, F, G, A, B. The C is always to the left of the 2 black keys. The B is always to the right of the 3 black keys. If we number the keys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, starting on C, we have the first scale, C major. The number system 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the crux of harmony and theory. And the black keys are the unnumbered blocks, also known as the enharmonic notes or tones, which are used for flats and sharps. The C major scale is the big bang of music. Every style of music, past, present, and future, comes from the major scale and variations thereof. An interval is the distance between two tones. Let's look at the intervals of the major scale. Just take the number and you have the name of the interval. For instance, the two white keys next to each other, 1 and 2, that's a second. 1 and 3, that's a third. 1 and 4, that's a fourth. That's a fifth. That's a sixth. And that's a seventh. Intervals are divided into two sets, the majors and the perfects. The majors are 2, 3, 6, 7. The perfects are 1, 4, 5, 8. How can a 1 be an interval? Just picture two instruments playing the same note, and you have a unison or a perfect prime, which is the 1. As for the 8, we'll get into that later. Let's break down intervals even further using our building blocks again. Any two blocks or notes adjacent or next to each other is called a half step. That's 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 a half step, so on and so forth. Any three blocks or two half steps is a whole step. Or you could look at it as two keys with one in between. That's a whole step. 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 That's a whole step, so on and so forth. One block is a unison, which equals 0 steps. Two blocks are a minor second, which equals 1 half step. Three blocks are a major second, which equals 2 half steps, or 1 whole step. 4 blocks are a minor third, which equals 3 half steps, or 1.5 whole steps. 5 blocks are a major third, which equals 4 half steps, or 2 whole steps. 6 blocks are a perfect fourth, which equals 5 half steps, or 2.5 whole steps. 7 blocks are a diminished fifth, which equals 6 half steps, or 3 whole steps. 8 blocks are a perfect fifth, which equals 7 half steps, or 3.5 whole steps. 9 blocks are a minor sixth, which equals 8 half steps, or 4 whole steps. 10 blocks are a major sixth, which equals 9 half steps, or 4.5 whole steps. 11 blocks are a minor seventh, which equals 10 half steps, or 5 whole steps. 12 blocks are a major seventh, which equals 11 half steps, or 5.5 whole steps. Now let's look at the relationship of the intervals to the intervals. You already know that the distance from the 1 to the 2 is a major second, or a whole step. But the distance from the 2 to the 3 is also a major second, or a whole step. The distance from the 3 to the 4 is a minor second, or a half step. The distance from the 4 to the 5 is a major second, or a whole step. The distance from the 5 to the 6 is a major second, or a whole step. The distance from the 6 to the 7 is a major second, or a whole step. And the distance from the 7 to the 1 is a minor second, or a half step. In essence, if you sharp a major or a perfect, you get an augmented. If you flat a major, you get a minor. If you flat a minor or a perfect, you get a diminished. In studying the altered intervals, many of them will look different on paper, in theory or in notation, but sonically they are the same. Here is a 2. If we sharp the 2 by moving the 2 one to the right, and here is a 3, and if we flat the 3 by moving it one to the left, we can see that a sharp 2 and a flat 3 are the same. Again, here's a 4. If we sharp the 4, here's a 5. If we flat the 5, sharp 4 and flat 5 are the same. Here's a 5. If we sharp the 5, or take the 6 and flat the 6, sharp 5 and flat 6 are the same. Here's a 6th. If we sharp the 6th, or take the 7th and flat the 7th, we see that sharp 6 and flat 7 are the same. This also works with double sharps and double flats. Here's a 7th. Let's flat it twice. There's a flat and a double flat. A double flat 7 is equal to the 6th. Here is a 4th. Let's double sharp it. Sharp, double sharp. A double sharp 4 is the same as the 5th. If you take the 4 and double flat it, flat, flat, a double flat 4 is the same as a flat 3. All 12 tones, which comprise the 7 tones of the major scale and the 5 enharmonic tones, collectively are known as the chromatic scale. This can be repeated in both directions, up and down. The point where the pattern repeats with the 1 is also known as an 8. This is the octave of the 1. Every note has an octave. All the notes of the key of C are easy to see on the keyboard because they are all the white keys. On the guitar, things get a little bit more complicated. Later, we'll show you how to break this menagerie of notes into a playable format. Now, let's learn how to alter the intervals of the major scale to create different scales, sometimes known as exotic scales. Then you will understand the information on the title page of each scale. Here is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the octave, which is the major scale in the key of C. We can change the major scale by altering the tones with sharps and flats to get new scales. If we flat the 3, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the octave, we get the melodic minor. If we flat the 3 and the 6, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7, and the octave, we get the harmonic minor. If we flat just the 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7, 1, we get the harmonic major. If we flat the 3 and the 6 and sharp the 4, we get a Hungarian minor. 1, 2, flat 3, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 7, and the octave. If we sharp the 2, sharp the 4, and flat the 7, we get a Hungarian major. 1, sharp 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and the octave. If we flat the 2, flat the 3, and flat the 6, we get the Neapolitan minor. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7, and the octave. If we flat just the 2 and the 3, we get the Neapolitan major. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. If we flat the 2 and the 3 and sharp the 4 and the 6th, we get an enigmatic minor. 1, flat 2, flat 3, sharp 4, 5, sharp 6, 7, and the octave. If we flat the 2, sharp the 4, sharp the 5, and sharp the 6, we get the enigmatic 1, flat 2, 3, sharp 4, sharp 5, sharp 6, 7, and 1. If we flat the 2 and the 6 and sharp the 4, we get the composite 2. 1, flat 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 7, and 1. If we flat just the 5, we get the Ionian flat 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, flat 5, 6, 7, and 1. If we flat the 2, the 3, the 5, and the 6, we get the Locrian natural 7. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, 7, and 1. If we flat the 2, the 5, and the 6, we get the Persian scale. 1, flat 2, 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, 7, and 1. Another way of altering scales for the sake of creating new ones is by adding or subtracting tones. For example, here's the major scale. If we delete the 4th and the 7th tones, we have the major pentatonic. Pentatonic means 5-tone scale. On page 148 of your Guitar Grimoire Scales and Modes volume, there is a mathematical formula for generating 15 pentatonic scales from any 7-tone scale or mode. The X's represent notes that are deleted from the 7-tone scale. The Cumoy is 1, 2, flat 3, 5, 6, and that is a pentatonic from the melodic. Now the 6-tone scales only have 6 tones. Take a 7-tone scale and delete 1 tone. There are numerous 6-tone scales in the Scales and Modes volume for you to toy with. On page 170 is a formula for transforming an augmented chord into 27 different 6-tone scales. The X's represent tones added to the tones of the augmented chord, which are 1, 3, and sharp 5. Every one of the 27 augmented scales will be compatible with an augmented chord. It stands to reason if you can subtract tones, you can add tones. For example, the bebop major is a major scale with the flat 6th added to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 6, 7, and 1. Commit to memory the patterns of the major scale in all keys and the minor and major pentatonics. Firmly memorize them. Don't worry about memorizing all the exotic scale formulas. That's why they are written out for you in the Guitar Grimoire Scales and Modes book, so you don't have to memorize them. As I compiled the scales in this book from numerous sources, I found discrepancies, such as different names for one scale formula or different formulas for one scale name. So it was a combination of which name best fit the formula, or sometimes a toss of the coin as to the naming of the scales. So keep an open mind. Until music is standardized, which you and I together are now doing, you will find discrepancies in other books as I did. It's not a matter of any other books being right or wrong, as much as how the author was taught. In summary, when dealing with the naming of exotic scales, it sometimes boils down to a matter of preference. When we get to the modes lesson, we'll show you how to get more scales out of the same scales. The number of modes that a scale has is based upon the number of tones that make up the scale. For example, every 7-tone scale has 7 modes. Every 5-tone scale has 5 modes. Every 8-tone scale has 8 modes, etc. The best way to think of modes is that the starting point of your scale is shifted to the various tones within that scale. For instance, if you start on the 2nd tone of the scale, then play an octave's worth of notes for that scale, you have shifted the tone center of that scale. Let's start with the modes of the C major scale, because the concept of the modes is most easily understood when demonstrated on the white keys of the keyboard. The first mode of any scale is the scale itself. In this case, the major scale is the first mode. It's called the Ionian mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Each mode thereafter is built upon each successive tone of the scale. So we'll move to the 2nd tone of the major scale and play an octave's worth of notes. But upon doing so, the intervallic relationship of the notes to each other changes. The 2nd mode is called the Dorian mode, and we now get 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. The 3rd mode, which for the major scale is called the Phrygian mode, goes 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. The 4th mode of the major scale is called the Lydian. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. The 5th mode of the major scale is called the Mixolydian, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. The 6th mode of the major scale is called the Aeolian, and it goes 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. The last mode of the major scale is called the Locrian, and it goes 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. Every scale has modes, and the concept we just demonstrated on the C major scale holds true for every scale. In fact, the modal process we just demonstrated in the key of C using the white keys on the keyboard is pictured in the numeric scale mode chart at the bottom of every title page. The top set of numbers represents the formula of the scale you are studying, in this case the melodic minor. Using the same method we did with the major scale, we can then generate the modes. If we shift the tone center of the melodic to the 2, and we now have a Dorian flat 2. That is the name for that mode. 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. If we shift the tone center to the flat 3, which is a 3rd tone of the melodic, this mode is called Lydian augmented. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, sharp 5, 6, 7. If we shift the tone center to the 4th tone of the melodic, we get the Lydian dominant. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, which is our Lydian, 5, 6, flat 7, which is our dominant. If we shift the tone center from the 4 to the 5 tone, we now get the Hindu scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. If we shift the tone center to the 6th tone of our scale, we get the Locrian natural 2, which is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. If we shift the tone center to the last tone, the 7th tone in this scale, we get the super Locrian, which is 1, flat 2, flat 3, flat 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7. It's very similar in nature to the Locrian from the major scale, except that the 4 is flat as well. Now, many modes have names, as you've just seen, and because they can be treated as scales themselves. Sometimes some of the names, such as Hindu and Oriental, give you clues as to the culture that may have used that scale for its music. And in some cases, the names will just serve to confuse you. Remember, it's not the name of the mode that is important, but the formula. Now, let's demonstrate modes used as scales, starting on C. The Dorian is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. The Phrygian, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. The Lydian, 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. The Mixolydian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. The Aeolian, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. The Locrian, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 1. Bear in mind, when you're using a mode as a scale, what you are playing is a modal relative. On the title page of each scale is a chart called the Quick Mode Generator chart. This chart gives you an instant representation of modal relatives, and it works like this. The numbers across the top represent the modes. In this case, we're just using numbers, even though some of the modes of some of the scales have names. We'll always stay to the consistent numbering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The letters in the first column represent the pitch you want to start your modal scale on. Here's how it works. The point where the two meet is the relative. For instance, if you want an F Mixolydian, Mixolydian is the 5 mode. Where that meets, what you're really playing is a B flat major. An F Mixolydian is a B flat major. If you want a D Lydian, what you're really playing is an A major. If you want a G Phrygian, what you're really playing is an E flat major. If you want a B flat Locrian, what you're really playing is a B. If you want a C Lydian, what you're really playing is a G major. Changing keys is known as transposing. When you place the 1 on a different note and play the scale formula, you have changed keys. You already know the major scale in the key of C. It's all the white keys. Now let's put the 1 on the first black key next to the C and play our formula. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Let's play it on D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. E flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. F sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. A flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. B flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And then you would start with the C again. Now, as you can see, transposing is a little bit more difficult on the keyboard. In fact, those were not the proper fingerings for those keys. However, we played it that way so that you could easily see the scale formula. On the guitar, transposing is much easier. You take your entire pattern and just move the whole pattern up or down the amount of frets you are transposing to. For example, here's one octave of the major scale in the key of C, starting on the 5th string. Now let's change to C sharp major, and you see the whole pattern just moves up. Here's D, E flat, E, F, and then we can descend back to E, transposing is really nice on the guitar. If you don't already know how, let's learn the mechanics of guitar tuning, as that is a key to understanding interval maps. The strings are tuned in fourths. In other words, the distance from the 6th to the 5th string is a fourth. Here's the 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that holds true for all the strings, except the 2nd and 3rd. They're tuned in thirds. 1, 2, 3. And then for the 1st and 2nd, we're back to fourths. The reason for this is this allows us to play 6-note chords. On page 17, you will see 12 guitar interval maps, one for each key. As you recall, the major scale in the key of C on the keyboard is all the white keys. On the bottom half of page 17, the second interval map from the left is the key of C interval map. Each interval map is the major scale in all 12 keys. This is what the major scale looks like in the key of C on the guitar. The interval maps show you the intervallic relationship of the strings to each other. You can't play chords on one string, but when we have multiple strings, we can play chords. But first, let's see how intervals apply to the guitar, and then you'll be able to understand interval maps. First, let's learn the major scale in the key of C, 1 octave's worth on each string. Here it is on the 6th string, starting on the 8th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Here it is on the 5th string, starting on the 3rd fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Here it is on the 4th, starting on the 10th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Here it is on the third, starting on the 5th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Here it is on the second, starting on the 1st fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Here it is on the 1st string, starting on the 8th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, let's look at the intervals on the individual strings and across multiple strings. First of all, before we start that, any 2 frets, that's a half step, okay? Half step, anywhere. That's a half step, half step, half step, half step. Okay, let's move on. Now, just like on the keyboard, where the numbers represented the intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Same holds true on the guitar. That's a 2, otherwise known as a major second. That's a 3rd. That's a 4th. That's a 5th. That's a 6th. That's a 7th. And that's an octave. But it gets a little bit awkward playing like this. That's why we have multiple strings. So let's learn the intervals on the multiple strings. Okay? That's a second. So that's a second. Now playing it with 2 strings, you can play it as a chord. Or an interval. Interval is a 2-note chord. Now, here's a 3rd. Here's a 3rd. Anywhere you play this interval, that's a 3rd. Okay? Anywhere you play this interval, that's a 2nd. Now, the only time that changes is on the 2nd and 3rd string, which are tuned in 3rds rather than in 4ths like the other strings. And so this is a 2nd. Okay? That's a 3rd. That's a 2nd. Alright? So, 3rd, anywhere except 3rd between the 2nd and 3rd string. And then we're back to this for a 3rd. Now the 4th. 4th is any 2 strings side by side, because our guitar is basically tuned in 4ths except for the 2nd and 3rd, so a 4th is played like this on the 2nd and 3rd strings. Alright? And then we're back to a 4th like this. Now, 4th, 5th, that's a 5th. And anywhere you play that, it's a 5th, except that a 5th is played like this on the 2nd and 3rd string. Like this everywhere else, including the first 2 strings. The 5th is the most common interval for hard rock, heavy metal, and it is often referred to as the power chord. The 5th. Now on to the 6th. Many times the 6th is shuffled between the 5th, like in a blues shuffle. 5th and 6th and 5th and 6th. Okay? 5th and 6th. A 6th can also be played skipping a string. That's a 6th anywhere. 6th anywhere. But then when it comes to the 2nd and the 4th string, that's a 6th. And that's because the idiosyncrasy between the 2nd and the 3rd string being tuned at 3rds. And this is also 6th. Here, 6th. Okay, this is a seventh, major seventh, seventh, seventh. A seventh is played like this over here. This is the sixth and the fourth string, seventh, fifth and the third string, seventh, and then it changes because of the 2-3 idiosyncrasy. This is a seventh between the second and the fourth string, and this is a seventh between the first and the third string. Seventh. Now, an octave. That's an octave. And that's the sixth and the fourth string. Fifth and the third, that's an octave. Octave changes a little bit. There's 2 frets in between for the second and the fourth string. And the same thing holds true for the octave between the first and the third string. You can play an octave like this, skipping 2 strings. This is the second and the fifth string. And the same holds true for the first and the fourth string. And then the octave has 2 frets in between it when you're using the sixth and the third string. Okay, intervals on the fretboard. Okay, we went through the basic intervals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now let's check out some of the intervals altered with flats and sharps. Okay, this is a minor second, half step, and between 2 strings, it's like this. Minor second, minor second, minor second, minor second. Let's see, it changes for the second and third string, and then back to. Okay, now a minor third. This is a third here, so this is a minor third on 1 string. Across 2 strings, this is a minor third. Okay, minor third. Okay, minor third on 1 string. Minor third across 2 strings. 2 strings. And then, because these 2 strings, the second and the third, are tuned in thirds, the minor third is played like this, only 1 fret apart between those 2 strings, whereas all the other strings, the minor third is played with an extra fret in between, spanning 3 frets, 2 frets, minor third, minor third, minor third, minor third, minor third. Okay, the fourth we've already covered. Here's a sharp 4 or a flat 5. Take your pick. By the way, this interval here, the sharp 4, flat 5, is many times referred to as the tritone. Tritone, tritone, tritone. Tritone here, because this is a fourth between the second and third string, so that's a sharp 4th. Tritone, 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 tritone. Okay, sharp 5, sharp 5 or a flat 6, and that could also be played like this. Okay, across multiple strings. Okay, sharp 5, or flat 6, flat 6. Take your pick. Okay, here's a flat 7. Sharp 5, sharp 5, sharp 5, sharp 5. Okay. And let's see, sharp 5 here like this. Right. Sharp 5 here, sharp 5 there. It's the only thing where things get a little bit tricky is the second and the third string. Okay, flat 7, flat 7, flat 7, flat 7, flat 7, anywhere, flat 7. But then as soon as you get the second and the fourth string, flat 7, flat 7. Earlier, we mentioned that we would take this menagerie of notes and break it into a playable format. Knowledge of the interval maps, or how intervals work on the guitar, allows us to do this. All the 7 patterns that make up the major scale are merely combinations of the first 3 mini patterns listed on page 19 of your Guitar Grimoire Scales and Modes volume. The other patterns come into play when you're playing the exotic scales. The concepts of everything I teach you on the major scale will apply to whatever scale you use. Alright, this is the first mini pattern. And basically it's the 1, 2, 3 intervals, that is. 1, 2, 3, whole tone, and another whole tone. Learn it on all your strings because it's going to surface all the time for the rest of your life. You can also do things like this as you're learning the mini patterns. Okay, this is the next mini pattern. And you can do the same thing like you're going to do with the other one. And the third mini pattern. Basically, that's just it here. The difference between the second and the third is the second is a half step and a whole step, while the third mini pattern is whole step and a half step. And the first mini pattern is a whole step and a whole step. Okay? We combine the mini patterns to make the breakdown patterns. Okay? We have 7 breakdown patterns because this is a 7-tone scale, the major scale that is. 8-tone scales have 8 patterns, 5-tone scales have 5 patterns, so on and so forth. These patterns will be your friends for the rest of your life, so learn them well. Alright, let's learn the patterns. When you're learning the patterns for the first time, you want to get yourself an area of the guitar where there's not too much stretching, for starters. And let's take the first pattern, and it's like this. It's 2 of the first mini patterns, 2 of the second mini patterns, and 2 of the third mini patterns. Now this is the sweep pattern, okay? And you want to learn the patterns in a very comfortable area, like I said. And And once you get comfortable with them, then you can take them to the first fret. And you can then start to move the patterns up the fretboard. All the way up the fretboard until you cover that. Now, let's do the second pattern. You want to do the same trick that we did before with the first pattern. Start it in an area where it's nice and comfortable and not a whole lot of stretching, because you're going to be stretching when you start going to the first fret. And what we have here with the second sweeping pattern, we got number 3 mini pattern, and number 1 3 times, and then number 2 pattern twice. Okay, and when you get comfortable with that, then you can do the same trick that you did with the first pattern, playing it up the entire fretboard. Okay, pattern 3. Get yourself a nice comfortable position again. Now I want you to notice something here. You remember in pattern 2 where you had 3 of the first mini patterns together? Well, the same phenomenon takes place over here, except because of the idiosyncrasy of the second and third string, these two are shifted 1 fret off from this one here. But it would be the same thing as like what's going on in the second pattern, okay? So third pattern, whatever fret you choose to learn it on. And then you can eventually do the same thing. I think I threw a curveball at my camera person over here. You can do the same thing. Throw curveballs at my camera person. No, actually start playing the patterns on the first string and move it all the way up to the... And pattern number 4. Pattern number 4 is a little bit weird. It starts with a first mini pattern, and then it changes position slightly over here to like that. And you can do the same thing with that, playing it all the way up and down the neck. Pattern 5. Let's move on to pattern 5. Pattern 5, the 3 in a row that gets split up for pattern 3, but are together for pattern 2, are the beginning part of pattern 5. See, now these would be side by side like this, but because of the 3-2 idiosyncrasy, they get split up. So that's pattern 5. And you'll want to take that to the first fret, move it all the way up to the thing. Let's go to pattern 6. And here's that split again, pattern 6, because of the 3-2 idiosyncrasy. Okay, pattern 6, take that to the first fret, all the way up the fretboard. Pattern 7. Pick a fret, any fret, and you got 2 of mini pattern number 2 side by side, 2 of mini pattern number 3 side by side, and 2 of mini pattern number 1 side by side. And then take that to the first fret, up and down the fretboard, and memorize those patterns. The sweep picking patterns, more accurately, should be called 3 notes per string patterns. The reason they are called sweep picking is because of the style of picking normally used to play them. I will briefly explain sweep picking now that you've learned the patterns. Sweep picking works like this. On ascending, each string would be picked down, up, down, 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 down, up, down. And descending, the picking is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And the whole point of sweep picking is that when you're going from one string to the next, you're conserving energy, you're conserving motion, which is the most difficult picking style to master is alternating. That's where you're playing everything down, up, 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 down, up. And when you're changing from one string to the next, if you have to reverse your picking, you do it. Everything is consistently alternating down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And I still use sweep picking, but only in effects like. Now this is alternating picking. Here's sweeping. When mastered, alternating picking actually allows you to pick faster than sweep picking. Now we are going to teach you how to connect the patterns for complete fretboard playing. Okay, this is the key of C on the 6th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And the notes below this point: 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 3. Okay? Now, each note of the key of C is the starting point of each pattern. The first note is the starting point of the first pattern. Pattern 1. Okay, the second note is the starting point of pattern 2. Pattern 3 is the starting note of pattern 3. Pattern 4, and note number 4. Pattern 5, and it starts getting squished down here. So let's bounce pattern 3. Since it starts on the 12th fret, we can take it down to the open position. Pattern 3. Okay, pattern 4. Pattern 5, pattern 6, pattern 7, and then it would start all over again with pattern 1. Now, pattern 3 in the open position, played with the conventional patterns, is the pattern that's used for teaching the notes of the strings in method books, like so. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then in reverse. Now let's connect the patterns in the key of F. First, let's play F major on the 6th string, starting on the 1st fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay? Here's pattern 1. Here's pattern 2. Pattern 3. Pattern 4. Pattern 5. Pattern 6. Pattern 7. And then pattern 1 again. F major is a great scale to demonstrate on the guitar pattern connection. Now the patterns always have the same relationship to each other. For instance, pattern 1 and pattern 2 will always be the same distance from each other, regardless of what key. Pattern 1, pattern 2. Pattern 1, pattern 2. Pattern 1, pattern 2. And that holds true with all the patterns, regardless of what key you're playing in. The difference between the sweeping and the conventional patterns is that the sweeping patterns have 3 notes on each of the 6 strings, and the conventional patterns have 3 notes on 5 of the strings and 2 notes on 1 of the strings, usually the 2nd or the 3rd string. Now, let's analyze this. The first part of the conventional is the same as the sweeping. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. Now, the 3rd string, 3, 4, 5, here's the change, 3, 4. And then the 5 is played on the 1st string. And what happens is we're actually getting this part of the conventional pattern from the previous sweeping pattern. So here we go, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now let's take a look at pattern 2 of sweeping and conventional. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here's the change on the 3rd string, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 1, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Let's look at pattern 3 of sweeping and conventional. 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here's the change on the 3rd string again, 5, 6, and then 7, 1, 2, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Now let's look at pattern 4. 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and here's the change again, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Let's look at pattern 5. 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, and here's the change on the 3rd string again, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7. Let's look at pattern 6. 671, 671, 234, 234, 567, 567, 123, 12. Here's the change on the third string again, and then 345, 345, 671, 671. Last but not least, let's check out pattern 7. 712, 712, 345, 345, 671, 671, 234, 234, 567, and this time the change comes on the second string, 56, 712, 712. Do not favor either the sweeping patterns or the conventional patterns. Use them both. And if you'd like to pursue finger exercises using the scale patterns, check out the exercise book. It's jam-packed with all kinds of exercises for you. I hope you enjoyed this session on scales and modes in the Harmony and Theory series, and I look forward to seeing you on the Chords and Voicings DVD. Remember, music is not just an art form, it is power. Use it wisely.